Hello, everyone, and welcome to our 2019 MSP Business Plan in a Box webinar. My name is Bob Penland. I'm Chief Technology Officer at True Methods, and I'm joined by Gary Pica. Hey, Gary.
Heyo!
Hello.
All right, Bob, do a little housekeeping, and then it's the most wonderful time of the year. Business
Yeah,
planning for MSPs.
right. We're taking stock of our 2018 and planning for our 2019. So you can listen in on VoIP or you can dial in on the phone. If you dial in on the phone, make sure you enter your audio PIN, which can be found in the GoToWebinar control panel. Also in that control panel, there's a questions box. If you have any questions or thoughts, just go ahead and type them in there. We'll either answer them in the background or we'll bring them up live. We are recording this, and we will send out a link within the next 1 to 2 days with the recording, so you'll be able to go back and review it at your convenience. And I think that's about it. I think we can get going.
Want to get started? Well, I first want to start off by thanking two great companies, friends, sponsors, StorageCraft and Auvik, who they feel like this is so important to the community, this concept of business planning, and they know that we do this every year, so they were nice enough to promote this to their, to their customers and prospective customers to the industry. So we want to thank them and make sure you stay to the end because we have a special offer from both Auvik and StorageCraft that you will want to hear. Also, in case you want to follow along with this, we'll bring it up at the end, but if you go to truemethods.com/plan19, you can download this business plan blueprint. It's 8 or 9 pages, and the last page is a worksheet that has the math that we're going to go through. So you can download it now, or you can wait till the end and maybe rewatch this and go through it, but pretty much takes you through the whole process that we're going to do. And Bob, I want to start off as we get started here by saying just how passionate we are here at True Methods about helping not just our customers, but the industry focus on this process of business planning. And having myself been involved in scaling 3 successful businesses, 2 MSPs, and now True Methods, this framework really has been at the center, right, of being able to grow a business, grow it profitably, help customers more, create value for our team members. It's really the center of it, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Yep. Can't figure out how to get there without having the right kind of plan, right?
So yeah, and as part of what we do at True Methods, in addition to our software, My IT Process, and our training, we have a peer group and that meet in Philadelphia, and we really we ingrain this right into the core fabric of those people that we work so closely with. And I want to say this: having a business plan does not ensure that you grow faster or make money. However, pretty much every company that achieves growth and profitability, like the top companies in this industry, I can't think of one of them that doesn't have an actionable business plan and discipline around this process, Bob.
Yeah, really, you can't get to be the top of the industry without having some plan of action to get there, and because it takes a long time, and you got to continually align yourself against that plan.
Yeah, yeah. Just real quick, I want to say here, someone had sent in that said that URL is going to 404. So Sam, our producer, is on the line. Sam, if you can go and check out, and also Thad, make sure that you put in True Methods with no E in True. Okay, so that's a common mistake. TRU Methods /plan19.
Yeah, I just tried it. It looks like it's working okay. So
Okay, he's got it
yeah.
working. All right, want to make sure we're not going to frustrate anybody with that. Bob, quick audience poll, and then we're going to dive in.
Yeah, we're going to start a little poll here on if you have a 2019 business plan. So, yeah, just go ahead and select one of these answers. Yes, I have a 2019 business plan. No, but I'm working on it. No, I haven't started. And/or business plans are silly. So,
So we get a bunch of people on here today. Great turnout, by the way. I want to thank everybody. Amazing turnout. So let's see what we get here, Bob.
yeah, we got about 60% of the votes in. Okay, a little bit more. All right, let's go. Close that. I'm going to close this up. And let's share it. There we go. Hey, we got about 18% done. People working
Good.
on it
That's
at
awesome.
50%. Haven't started yet. Well, there's still some time left in the year. Let's hopefully we'll learn something with this. And we just use that last option to make sure that we ban you from future business
Yes,
planning webinars.
exactly.
So you'll be
Awesome.
hearing from us. No,
All right.
okay. Let's
So
go.
let's go ahead and close that down. And here's some of the top excuses over the last decade as we've taught this. We hear it's like, hey, I'm already working as hard as I can, or I'm buried in reactive work. In other words, I don't even have time or resources to take action on a plan. So why should I have one? Or I just need to finish a few things first. Or my company's small. It doesn't need a written plan. Bob, these are all the reasons to have a business plan.
Exactly.
Look, I've been in business for 22 years, scaled the first MSP to over 7,000 endpoints. We helped scale a second MSP during our time here at True Methods, and now being in this business for 10 years. The reason you have a business plan is you never have time. If you have a growing business, there's always employees, customers, tickets, alerts. It never ends. The idea of a business plan is to be able to make changes, set priorities, and move forward. Like I like to say, you can start driving the car. You have to drive the car down the highway, change the wheels while the car is driving down the highway. These are all the reasons you need a plan. Because if you're waiting to come in one day, and I call it the clear the decks mentality, and say, oh, guess what? I have nothing to do today. There's no customer issues. There's no employees issues. There's no tickets. There's no alerts. I have nothing to do. So you know what? I'm going to work on the business today.
Right.
That day's not coming. And as your business grows, you're further from having that happen. So that's why this is so critical. And Bob, why we use a framework, okay? A classic business planning framework. So if you've read the book, whether you might use like Traction or EOS, or whether you use Gazelle's Mastering the Rockefeller Habits, or read any of Jim Collins, it all kind of falls into the same, from the top level, of vision, target, plan, and action. And we're going to touch on each of these as we show you the numbers, but specifically how this looks for an MSP. Vision is kind of like that long-term plan that you have for yourself, and if you're an entrepreneur, not just your business but your life. And I say, Bob, that's also where we talk about core values, company purpose, right? Those kind of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
And then targets are really important, because 3 years is far enough in the future where it's reasonable that you can still see it, but it's far enough that you can have some setbacks or some missteps and still be able to reach those targets. And then, of course, our plan, which is the way we look at our business, right? 1 year increments. And the most important thing is getting down to that quarterly action plan, because that's where we execute the plan. So everything else we do is to determine what's most important each quarter and then execute. And when you're executing the most important things in your business, the top few things every quarter, and you let a number of quarters go by, amazing things happen. So the first thing you want to do in preparing for your 2019 business plan is you want to review your 2018 results. You want to look at your revenue by category. So what do we mean by category, Bob? MRR, monthly recurring revenue, maybe non-recurring services, product revenue. Maybe you have some ORR, things you don't include in your monthly recurring revenue because it's not really fully managed, but maybe one-offs that you sell outside of your offering. So whatever your categories are, look at your revenue by category for 2018. It's also nice to compare them 2018 compared to 17, so you see those trends. And I like to look at this month by month. So when I look at 2018, Bob, I like to see, each month so that you can see trends over the course of the year. Same thing with gross margin by category. We know that we want to have margins, gross margins on managed services, of 70% or greater. Hopefully on your product, you're at 20% or greater. So being able to see your margins by category is important. How much new monthly recurring revenue did you sell? Right? How much churn did you have and why? Was it good churn, bad churn? Because there is both, right? What is your current all-in seat price? In other words, if you take all your recurring revenue divided by the number of seats you have under management, that tells you what your average seat price is. And what's your average MRR? What is your average deal size worth? So take all your MRR divided by the customers to make that up, because there are two metrics we're going to look at today. And then finally, Bob, like ticket noise, right? What's your relative ticket noise? You can look at that in a couple ways, but a simple way would just be like maybe your tickets per month per end user, Bob?
Yeah. So, I mean, right, or how much time you're spending on reactive service per month per endpoint. So
Yeah.
one of those two measures. I mean, it ultimately ends up being like how many endpoints can you support per reactive service person, right? Like
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
also like it ultimately ends up being there. But what are we required to do to fix things or from customer requests that, aren't a part of our, superpower type stuff?
Yeah, and the reason why we put that on there is it's a main determining factor in terms of your value, in terms of your profitability, how much you're able to charge. So again, we won't go into those metrics today. We don't have time, but we have other content that talks specifically about reactive noise levels and what it means. But you should at least be taking a look at your noise levels, relatively speaking. Okay, so now you have a baseline. You looked at 2018 and maybe even looked at 17 and 18 comparative. So you got a good feel. You looked at the 18 numbers month by month. You kind of know what you did in sales. So now we're ready to start thinking about our 2019 business plan. And really, we say start with that 10-year vision for your life and company. Most of the customers we work with, Bob, in this industry, most MSPs are entrepreneurial businesses. Not all of them, but a big percentage of them. When you talk about an entrepreneurial business, the line between business and life, it's right, it's pretty gray. So you really got to start thinking about some life goals that you have, and also considering, some your team and some of your key team members as that as well, and do some soul searching. Like this is the time to think about like why did you get into this business, and I like to ask people this question, Bob. Like when you first got in business, what were your expectations? Like what did you think your life would be like? What your job would look like? What your bank account would look like? How much you would have grown? Your profitability? And then and have your expectations changed over time, right? The reality of life. And but one thing is for sure, like where do you want to be in 10 years? Like how do you want to be spending your time? What do you want to be doing? How do you want to be impacting, your community, your customers, your team members? And then you put a price tag on your life's vision. And that's kind of where we're going to start this process. And this is what that price tag, from our perspective, is one way to look at it, Bob.
Yeah, makes sense.
Any questions on that? Okay, listen, this is what this stands for. After tax dollars in your personal bank account. One of the reasons when you take when you're a business owner, you take a salary, that's just that. That's your salary for doing your job. After you pay your salary, the profit that's left, and more importantly, the profit that's left after taxes, that's your return on risk, your return on investment. That's why we do this harrowing experience we call being business leaders and business owners. So think about all the things you have to do, Bob, to get after tax dollars in your personal bank account. You have to sell something. You have to deliver it. You have to bill for it. You have to collect. You got to pay all your overhead. You got to pay all your payroll. You got to pay your personal living expenses or salary. If anything's left after all that, you have to pay taxes. This is what's left after all of that. And it's one of the reasons why people get into business. So we're going to start there. We call it a liquid net worth goal. So we want all business owners to set, like a 10-year liquid net worth goal to say, in addition to wherever I am, I want to have this much money after taxes, in my bank account 10 years from now. And we picked a number that was simple for math purposes, Bob, of 1.5 million. So, and that is what you want to have in the bank, not including the value of your business and not including the value of your home. Okay. And consider life events. So if you have kids to send to college or parents elderly parents to take care of, or you dream of a vacation home, factor all that stuff into this. And then we're going to simply determine your post-tax dollars are required, okay? So all we're going to do is take that 1.5 million and divide it by 10. So we're not considering your investments and the time value of money because we don't want to complicate it. You can do that after the fact. But basically, if you could run your business, pay all of your business expenses and all of your personal expenses and all of your taxes, and you had 150,000 left over at the end of the year, and you did that for 10 years, you'd get there. Are you with me, Bob?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Simple?
Yeah.
But you do have to pay taxes. So we're going to take this. This is the additional annual income goal you have, and how much additional annual income do you need to generate that? So we gross this up for taxes. We use a 35% tax effective rate. You can use one based on your country and your state, and said that we need to generate an additional $230,000 of personal income per year in order to be able to reach our after-tax goal. Now, this is where the magic starts to happen. This is where we connect your personal goals to your business, because we're going to turn that $230,000 income goal into a business goal. So we want to know how much annual revenue do we have to is required for us to generate that. So if we divide 230,000 by whatever your net profit percentage is, and true net profit after owner salary, we used 18% in this example to come up with 1,275,000. So I need revenue, annual revenue in my business, Bob, of $1,275,000 in addition to where I am at 18% to generate that 230. Good so far?
Yep. Okay.
Next, we want to turn that into something we can control, which is a recurring revenue goal. So we're going to take that 1.275 million and say, well, 70% of our revenue will be recurring, which is a little under 900,000. Now, if we divide that by 12, guess what we have? We have an MRR goal. So if we can build an additional $75,000 a month of monthly recurring revenue at 18%, we will generate all the revenue and all the profitability we need to reach your goal. So I want to make sure that everybody understands this, because this is real important. We did three things here. We took that additional annual income goal and we turned it into a revenue goal. The key piece there is what your percentage is, and we're going to show you some examples at the end of the impact of that, because it's so important. Then we turned that into a recurring revenue goal. So you can use your own percentage. We said 70% of the revenue should be recurring. And then by dividing that number by 12, we now have taken the entire plan down to one goal, which is an MRR goal, something that we can focus on, drive to, and build our plan around. Does that make sense, Bob?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So let's do this now. Now we know that's where we got to get to. We need another 75,000. So let's make that our target and say we're going to set our time frame to reach that of 3 years. And to determine what our MRR goal for this year is, we're just going to divide that. So, again, depending upon where you are, Bob, we're using simple math. Your number might be a lot higher than 75,000, or it might be lower. And based on where your sales engine is, you may say, okay, this is 75,000. You know what? I think I'm going to need to sell more of it in year 2 or 3. I'm going to ramp up to it. And so, you have to apply this to your own business and where you are. But for our sake, again, to keep things simple, if we can add net after churn 25,000 of new MRR over 3 years, then we'll have the $75,000 a month of additional recurring revenue to reach our goals. So I think with these things, Bob, keeping the math simple really drives home the concepts. And when people go and use the workbook, I suggest that they do it in this simple fashion first. And then if they want to go ahead and tweak it and add some a little more complexity to it, they can do it. But start with the simple math, because it's a really make sure you don't get confused by any of the numbers. And And then you can go a step further here. And this is something we use in our training program called the sales goal calculator. So up top, you put in your goal. So we said our goal was $25,000 of new MRR this year. And our average MRR or contract size, our average customer spends $2,000 a month. We have a 20% close ratio. So that tells us we need about one customer a month. Now, in order to do that, we know that we need to have 4 or 5 prospects worth $8,000 or $9,000 MRR in our pipeline. Like in our pipeline means these are people that are making go, no-go decisions in the next 45 days. And based on our close ratio to do that, we'll need to go on 60 first-time appointments, right? 60 leads for the year, which is about 5 a month, which is about 1.2 per week. So if you currently are not generating 5 leads per month, Bob, you know what your top actions are. You have to figure out what you need to do to generate those 5 leads per month, because that's the bottom of this funnel. That's where it all starts to drive everything else that's here. Are you with me on this?
Yeah, we're just doing some math to get down to what we need to do per week. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So again, we're going to talk about the formula of setting MRR goals a little later in this. But again, we'll stress the close ratio and the average MRR size. And so I won't spend any more time on it now. But once we get through the plan, we're going to talk about some of the keys to making this plan go in today's MSP environment, and we'll touch on that. Okay, so again, I mentioned this earlier, but if you go to trumethods.com/plan 19, this is the last page of that. There's a True Methods planning worksheet. And if you see here, it has your financial goals, some facts about your business, translating those goals, your sales plan. So it kind of summarizes all the logic that we have on one page. Again, we're going to send a recording of this out. You might listen to the recording if you haven't downloaded this yet, and you'll be able to use this as a companion to it. So let's put this in perspective. Most of the time as we work with customers, Bob, our True Methods customers, and the first time we get them to set like a goal, a 10-year goal, they write a number down. That number in our case is, 1.5 million. It could be much larger. And maybe they just wrote a number down of 1.5 million they want to have after taxes in 10 years. And then they went and looked in their bank account, and they've been in business for 10 years, and there's 150,000 in the bank account. That number looks pretty big. In fact, the most common response we get of feelings that people have when they first start this process is nauseousness, Bob. They feel nauseous, right? Because they're saying, well, wait a minute, I've been doing this for 10 years and I'm here, and I'm saying, that now over 3 years I'm ramping this up, and in 10 years I'm going to be that much further ahead, right? And so but then they start to work through the numbers, and they say, okay, well, that's 230,000 more a year. That's still a lot. That's more than twice what I make now. And then they see this revenue number, and it's still big. Then the numbers start to get smaller. It's a recurring revenue number. It's an MRR 3-year goal. It's a 1-year goal. It's a monthly MRR goal, all the way down to the number of appointments needed, okay? And as they get down there and they say, well, listen, it's hard for me to see 1.5 million. It's hard for me to see another 1.3 million in revenue. But guess what? I think I can put a plan together and actions that gets me where I can, get out on about 1 appointment or so, per week. Like that seems like Bob, 1's a very doable number in most scenarios.
Yeah, and that's really the point of the process, is taking something that seems unattainable and breaking it down into something that's a weekly action, something that you can do every week. And if you do that every week, then you should be able to, and your numbers are in line, they're not unrealistic, you should be able to get there.
Right. And so if you, and again, in our program, we talk a lot about the quarterly action plan, but if you have a quarterly action plan, right, that each quarter, the most important things, and you can focus at the bottom of this funnel, okay, and you can do the most important things. We're going to talk about 2 things. One is sales and one is profitability, right? Trajectory and efficiency. But you can do the most important things, and you can focus on those things, and everything else is going to happen because you planned it that way. and you know what the math is, and you're going to check your close ratio, you're going to check your margins, you're going to make sure your assumptions stay in place, and all you have to do is execute, and everything else starts to happen. It's the closest thing I have found to magic, Bob, over time in business.
Yeah, it's magical.
Okay, so here's the two key factors that determine whether, when you make your plan, whether you're going to achieve it or not. One is profitability. Your net profit percentage is the biggest determining factor of the success of your company, the growth of your company, what your after-tax dollars will be in your personal bank account, and most importantly, how likely you are to have a business plan that's actually achievable. The second part is sales trajectory. It's because for most of us as MSPs, part of our plan is adding new monthly recurring revenue, right? So they're the two things. So let's look at how they both impact it. And first, let's start with profitability. So in the center is where we assumed a true 18% net profit after true owner's salary. So Bob, let me ask you a question. Do you know what percentage of MSPs average at least 18% net profit or greater?
No, tell me.
About 25%, the top quartile.
Right.
Guess how much the bottom 25% make if they take a true owner's salary?
Um,
Nothing.
yeah.
They're break even or worse, and everybody else is in the center. So if you're in that top quartile, you're going to make your goals the way we talked about. Let's just say you're a 12% net company. Guess what? In order to get to that same 10-year liquid net worth goal, you need $2 million of additional revenue instead of roughly 1.3. Okay? For most people, that's the difference between an achievable goal and one that starts to become unachievable. Let's go the other way. We ran the first MSP, Bob, at over 30. We ran at 33% net profit. Look at how achievable the goal becomes. You only need $767,000. Okay? Like, look at those numbers from left to right, from 12% to 30, of how achievable your goals become, or vice versa, how achievable they're not if you can't generate those kind of percentages. Let's give you one more view of this because it's so important. So this time we looked at it the opposite way. We said that everybody hit the same revenue goals, but with the different percentages of profit, the 12% company, they only get to under $1 million of liquid net worth in 10 years compared to our plan at 1.5. But look at 30%, almost 2.5 million. Bob, what's better? $1 million or 2.5 million?
As long as it's money in your pocket, yeah.
Yeah, at the same work and the same revenue levels. Do you understand what I'm saying here?
Yeah.
Okay. We had one question. Someone said here, can you define true owner's salary based on some metric like annual revenue? So here's what I'll say. I'll give you the simple answer and the more complex answer. The simple answer is everybody who's in this business needs to use a minimum, like when we work with our members and their smart numbers, we make them use a salary of 150,000. Okay. So, and for average companies, that's okay. As you start to scale up, you get above, $4, $5, $6 million. Then normally, you would scale that up to maybe, 250,000. But for our conversation's sake, people that are under 3 or 4 million in revenue, if you can at least use that, if nothing else, you can calibrate yourself to other people. So let's talk about how you make this plan. What are the things that we have seen? Look, we've been lucky enough to watch a lot of people the last 10 years execute their plans, Bob. Like they did this 10 years ago and they're at that liquid net worth and well beyond it now, right? But we've also watched people that haven't had a good plan or understood the keys on how to execute it that haven't gotten there. And so we want to spend the next part of this really talking about, as MSPs, what you need and what will determine the success now and in the future based on where the business is of making your plan. So here's some of the keys. One, your profitability determines your future success. I'm setting that kind of mark at a true 20% net profit. As you scale, you want to be at or above 20% net profit. Like Below that, you're not going to scale as quickly. You're not going to be able to take care of your team members the way you want. You have way less chance of achieving your business goals and your personal financial goals. Having said that, it's the value of your service offering. In other words, and we're going to define that, the price that you command for your offering is the key that drives profitability. So if you can command a higher price, you're going to drive more profitability. So value is key. And here's the thing. We find this across the board, Bob. MSPs that have the highest seat price, the people that charge the most, are also the ones that sell the most MRR. Doesn't that sound counterintuitive at first?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Because in most businesses, people with the lowest price have the highest volume. But in this business, the reason it's the opposite is because people that command the highest price, they have the highest amount of value into their offering. And so they're able to create separation in the sales process. They close more business. They have a higher close ratio. In other words, what I'm saying, what we've learned in working with thousands of MSPs, and we're lucky enough that the True Methods framework and our software is used by, over 20% of the Channel Futures 501, okay? Because we figured out that MSPs, they think they have a profit problem, they think they have a sales problem, they almost always have a value problem. And sometimes they confuse customer satisfaction scores with value. Just because your CSAT scores, your Net Promoter scores are high, that just means your customers like you. It doesn't mean they value you. A better indication of your value is what they're willing to pay you. So seat price on average measures value. And again, let me define seat price. If you take, I don't really care how you price your offering, okay? But if you take all of your monthly recurring revenue for your managed customers and divide it by all the seats or users under management, that tells you what your average seat price is. And that's a really important metric. One, in the other stuff we teach in economics, we're going to use that to match up against your average seat cost, but that's a whole nother webinar, Bob.
Yep.
But look here, okay? Top MSPs today are commanding $160 a seat or more, okay? And so these two MSPs, the one on top in green and the one on bottom in white, they both have 1,000 seats under management, okay? But at $160 a seat, they generate $160,000 a month of recurring revenue compared to someone who only commands a value of $110, who sends out bills for $110 a month. Look, $1,000 seats, we know a lot of companies that are in that range. $50,000 of net profit difference, okay? $600,000 a year. Bob, that's the difference between 12% and 20% or 22%. Right there. This is where it comes out in most cases, right? Mm-hmm. So the easiest way to achieve your goal is to be able to command a higher seat price.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? How do you do that? Well, we're going to tell you how to do it, but it's getting, it requires more. I'm not going to say it's harder today. I don't think it's harder. It requires more discipline and more thought to do it today. And here's one of the reasons why. It's something I call the 10-minute MSP. Bob, you can go to any industry event and go to the Solutions Pavilion with a credit card. Go see 4 or 5 of the tools manufacturers, and you can walk out an MSP. You're a 10-minute MSP, and you have the same core tool set as people that have been doing this for 10 and 15 years. The question is, can you deliver the same value as someone who's been doing it for 10 or 15 years? We say no. Knowledge and experience is huge in this business, but can the prospect tell the difference? When we launched True Methods 10 years ago, Bob, there was in North America, around 10,000 self-identified MSPs. Today, there's about 40,000. And the last 10 or 15,000 of them, they didn't go from break and fix, from fixing technology to managing it. They came in managing technology, and they came in to use all the latest tool sets.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So what do we do? Well, you have to evolve. Many of us who've been in business for a while, we went from fixing technology, right, to managing technology. Now, as that gets crowded, we have to move to delivering outcomes. So we went from a break and fix business to an MSP practice to something at True Methods. We've coined the term technology success practice. Part is compliance, having standards and aligning your customers. The other part is the business impact of misalignments. And ultimately, the goal is that strategy, which most people deliver through what we would call the VCIO process. So having discipline, roles, process, okay, and resources devoted to delivering outcomes is what separates top companies today. Here's why. SMBs, small, medium-sized businesses, our customer base, they look at expenses in two really different ways. One is they look at things as an SG&A, as an expense, the same way we as owners look at it. It's your office cleaning and supplies, your electric and phone and internet, your computer support, and many MSPs who are just managing technology, that's how you're looked at. Okay, as opposed to a functional area, ops, sales, HR, IT, that are strategic to the business and making those go. Okay, and I would say, Bob, IT has to be a functional area for our customers. It might be the most important one because it supports all those other areas. And for small businesses that we work with and medium-sized businesses, their IT is more important and it's more complex than even their finance. Are you with me on this?
Yeah, I mean, just technology is taking over all parts of small businesses, and they don't have a great strategy for addressing that inside their company. We have to change that conversation, but they don't see it that way unless we're able to educate them.
Let's use finance as an example. Everybody has some finance, a bookkeeper, a CFO, a controller, but every company has an accounting company they pay. Why? Well, because the accounting company is strategic. They deal with a lot of customers. They stay up on changing tax laws. They help you make decisions, strategic decisions in a different kind of way, right? Well, IT should be the same way. Like, again, even more so. What's the plan, the strategic plan for that business, and how will technology either create risk in achieving that plan or opportunities to make it happen? So how do you know where you are with your MSP today? Well, one, do your customers care a lot whether you charge them $4,000 a month or $3,200? If they care a lot about that, you're viewed as an SG&A because for your accounting company, you're not going to beat them up over a few $100s because it's strategic to you. Two, are you meeting with every customer with decision makers? Okay, are you meeting with the people that control their budget and are developing their strategic and business plan? If you're not, by definition, you are an expense item. If they're not taking your advice and making investments in technology, that's how they're viewing you. It's a tough place to live. Unfortunately, Bob, the MSP model is aimed at that SG&A. It's not really aimed at that strategic part. So if you look at the core of MSP, Bob, it's support, right? We provide support. We have our stacks. We call it centralized services. So that's your backup, your RMM, your security stack, maybe some cloud features, right? That's our tool set. And then, of course, we still have professional services. We move stuff to the cloud. We upgrade stuff, those kind of things. The other piece, and that's all aimed at SG&A. That's just managing technology. Super critical, super important, maybe more important to do it effectively today than ever before, but low perceived value because everybody expects that every MSP can do it, Bob, whether they can or not. As opposed to what we call technology success, that idea of standards and alignment and building that strategic VCIO relationship that drives that value up. So the MSP piece of that is aimed at the SG&A side, which we're still responsible for. The TSP stuff, okay, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it and then give you a little gut check. That's aimed purely roles and process aimed at being that functional area that your customers need. Some of them already know they need it, and some of them you have to explain it to them before they realize they need that, Bob.
Right. Yep.
So real quick, Bob, can you just take a minute and go through these two pieces? And then after that, we have a little gut check around the strategic relationship or VCIO that we can ask people so they can gauge where they are. And then I want to have some time before this ends to go do a little sales math.
Yeah, if you want to move to have a strategic relationship, you got to have a process for doing that. So we call that building a technology success practice. There's two specific delivery areas for that, technology alignment and VCIO. Inside each of those delivery areas, there's 4 steps in this process. The first one, we start in technology alignment. We have to have something to align against. We call those standards. This has become more prevalent because of compliance with both legal requirements and security requirements. But there's other standards in how to configure technology in a way that the customer's going to get the most value out of it. So that's our standards, having a standards library so that we can then perform the technical alignment. This is the objective analysis of where a client's technology and their use of it and their compliance with legal and security requirements, that objective evaluation. Where are they in and where are they out? So having a process to do that, those two things, we call that technology alignment. That's got to be a role in your organization. Someone has to do those things so that we can then give the VCIO really pertinent information about potential risks, whether they're technology or compliance related, so they can assess business impact. So think of all the stuff that we manage and then all the stuff that we're required to do now. If we have any HIPAA or NIST or DFARS or any of those requirements, it's really difficult for a VCIO without being fed that information to get it and to do it for enough clients and have those real high level strategic relationships. But they're the ones that are assessing that business impact based on the alignment and then putting together a client strategy that really has 2 pieces. There's technical goals, like we have to do these things because this is how technology needs to work, or stuff is old, or it needs to be upgraded or changed or migrated. Those are technical goals. The other side of that client strategy are business goals. So what does the client need to accomplish? And if we're going to be viewed as a strategic area inside their company rather than SG&A, we have to understand what the business is trying to do. And then how do we leverage technology to support that? So the VCIO has to be getting that information and then putting that together to create a client strategy so that they can build a strategic relationship with the client and not be viewed as, a salesperson or a virtual Captain Obvious, right?
And again, the key here is this is the stuff that uses all of your knowledge and experience and really is what separates the 10-minute MSP, right? And why, as you stay in business, you should be able to develop a competitive advantage, but you have to have a process so that you can funnel that to every customer and show them the value, right?
Yep.
Super important.
Yep.
So here's a little gut check that tells you where you are with building value and higher margins. Can each of your VCIOs manage at least 120,000 of monthly recurring revenue? Can they manage that much revenue? If they can't, there's a good chance that they're really account managers, right? They're dealing with reactive issues, not building strategic relationships. Do your VCIOs meet with decision makers, the people that control the budgets and strategy, or are they just meeting with points of contact, in which case they're really viewed as SG&A? Are they taking your recommendations? For every dollar of MRR, you should generate 30 cents in the dollar of non-recurring services based on implementing your recommendations. So if you do $100,000 a month today of recurring revenue, you should have 30,000 a month of non-recurring services to that same base. If you don't, if it's only 10,000, your customers might like you, but you're not really giving them advice that they value, because they're not making those investments. That this is what top MSPs look like. And ultimately, if you're doing that, can you command that right seat price? And we're going to revisit that. Next, does your VCIO understand your customer's business? Not just what business they're in. Hey, what are their revenue streams? What's their profitability? What's their position in the marketplace? Are they a big player in a small market, a small player? What are the strategic goals? Why do customers buy from them? What's their competitive advantage? If you don't know the answers to all these questions, you cannot be a strategic partner. You can't be a virtual CIO. That's the definition of a CIO, is to understand their business and their goals. then understand your technology to make recommendations. Bob, I did a presentation on the VCIO process. I made a little joke. I talked about VCIOs and VCOs, virtual captain obviouses. Hey, yeah, your server is old, you should replace it. Your licensing expired, you should renew it. And we talked through, hey, these two gut checks. And there was probably 250 people in the room. And of all the 10 years I've been doing presentations, it's the most emotional or visceral response I got. People saying to me, hey, if I'm honest with you, we're not doing this. We don't have these relationships. We don't have that technical information. We're not making those. We're not generating that. And it was a big eye opener, Bob, for everyone.
Yeah.
And that's how you get here, Bob. The companies that are, generating this, I know our most recent MSP, they were at probably about 100 to 110, right, when we got there. And by the end, right, as we exited this year, they're bringing on new customers at 165 a seat, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because we focused during those, 6 years that we work with them, we focus them on building that what we call that technology success. They have roles, process, discipline, and they have that relationship pretty much with every customer, and so they've driven their value up. Mm-hmm. And in every marketplace, we hear the same thing. I talk about pricing. Oh, well, we can't get those prices in our marketplace. No, you can. You just can't get them for doing support and centralized services and professional services alone.
Right.
You can't do it by doing just those things, because that's not where the value comes from, because 40,000 MSPs do that now. So, I want to go back here and show you one thing. So the first time we pulled this slide up, I showed you the difference in revenue, like, $50,000 a month of additional revenue by having that difference in seat price. But look what it does to your average MRR. Just by commanding that higher price with the same type of customers, you go from 2,200 average customer per month to 3,200. Now, why is that important? Well, because if you want to add $36,000 of MRR, instead of needing, 15 customers, you only need to close 11. So you only need 55 first-time appointments instead of 75. You're way more likely to do that, Bob. Okay? Here's another way of showing it to you. Here's the formula for monthly recurring revenue sales. Monthly recurring revenue goal equals the number of FTAs or leads, that's first-time appointments, so the number of appointments you go on, times your close ratio, what percentage of people that you meet with do you turn to sign an agreement, times what your average deal size is, okay? So if you have, in this example, if you want 36,000 a month, and through the course of the year, you went on 75 FTAs, you closed 20% of them, and they're each worth 2,500, you would get your 36,000. But if you did that same work, 75 appointments, 20% close ratio, at the higher seat price, everything else is the same, your average is 3,200, you would have closed $48,000 of MRR in the year, okay? Do you understand why this value is so important, Bob? It not only drives profitability, but we said that the people that have the highest seat price also sell the most. Getting some of the math behind us now?
Yeah, I mean, they're able to get the same amount of work, close more revenue.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we came up with this, Bob and I, we come up with a lot of stuff, Bob, now that I'm looking at this. We spend a lot of time thinking about how to explain things, don't we?
Yeah. Yeah.
We call this the MSP value stack. At the bottom of it, the base of it, is what MSPs are known for, the things we mentioned. They do support, they do professional services, and they do centralized services. They have their stack. Okay, that's the core of it. That's at the bottom, and that's the foundation. You've got to be able to do those things. I mean, we're going to talk about our sponsors a little bit. Auvik with network monitoring and StorageCraft with backup, why they're critical, and why we like to work with companies like that is they help you make sure that you have a secure, low risk, high efficiency way of that. But what's built on top of that are the roles and process that we call technology success, the idea of standards and alignment and impact and building that strategic roadmap for every customer. And the more resources you focus on there, the more you're going to drive up your value, and that can be seen in your seat cost. So how are you going to be accountable, right? And what's your discipline? Do you have metrics you're tracking? Bob, we like to talk a lot about rhythm, meeting rhythms. So do you have daily huddles and weekly meetings? Are you setting time aside every week, every month, every quarter to revisit your plan, to pull out your annual plan, to look at your quarterly plan, to see if you're tracking towards your initiatives, your big rocks? And is all of this part of your culture, right? Like, do you have a culture of accountability and discipline, not just as an owner, but one that permeates down to every team member, Bob? So let's talk a little bit about what we've learned, Bob. The real impact of business planning, it takes time to fully realize. If you're not doing this process now, you can, download our little workbook. You can get started with it. If you work with True Methods, we have tons of hours and forms and quarterly action plans that help you even more. But either way, if you get started with it, you'll do better in 2019. You'll achieve better results. But really, it's the time value that we have seen, Bob, right? That the more we learn about the business planning process, the more we want to learn. In fact, you and I have a coach.
Yeah, we do. And look, I would banish this thought from your mind that business plan is something that you ever get done. Like, this is
Nope.
not something that is an object that, okay, we spent some time and we built our business plan and we're good. It's something you spend time on, and why we're very careful to say business planning process, not business plan, right? We're going to create a business plan for 2019, but we're going to continually go back through and using our rhythm that we're going to nudge ourselves towards where we want to get to. It's constantly evolving. And the time and effort, I think, is what you're saying. The time that you're spending regularly thinking about where the business needs to go and what our goals are is really what helps you evolve over time, and so that you can reach your 10-year goals, right?
And as I think about the people we've worked with, and I think about some of people we know well, like from our Winner's Circle peer group, guys that when we met them, 7 or 8 years ago, they had 30,000 a month of the wrong revenue, and now they have businesses that generate 1.2 million to the bottom line today, right?
Right.
If you ask them, how did you get there? Look, part of it was True Methods helped them, right, with a framework and a software, a way of approaching it. But the real thing, we give that to everybody who we work with, was execution. They got there, and what's different about those business leaders and the way they carry themselves today compared to 7 years ago is they've been working on this process and getting command over their business. Each quarter, they have a little bit more command over the process and their business until it becomes like muscle memory.
Yeah. And look, this is not fun. This isn't a fun thing to do. Yeah, the results are good, and sometimes you have a good, you do some things, you reach some of your goals, you have a good quarter. Yeah, you feel good about yourself. But I'd say, we're looking at each other half the time, going, "Oh God, are you kidding?"
We have to make decisions. There's 3 things we want to do this quarter. We're realizing we can only pick 2. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not natural. I mean, a lot of people have gotten into this business because, you have some knowledge and skill and you're good at it, you're intelligent. This process is just something that you have to do, and it's discipline. But it does pay off over time. I remember us when we first started Schnitzfest. We had a panel that we called Mount Rushmore. Remember?
Yeah.
Yeah, and there were guys that we had known over the years, and Gary had been in groups with that had gotten really far down the line. And the people that were in our winner circle, they only winner circle for maybe a year at that point. And they're looking at them, going, "Oh wow, if I could, how did they do that? How did they get there?" Well, it's years of hard work in a business planning process.
Yeah.
And now they're the ones that are sitting on it could be on the
they're
MSP
on the
Mount
panel.
Rushmore. Yeah.
Or without it, it's years of hard work without getting where you want to get to.
Yeah, and we've seen that. We've been around long enough that we see that too. We see the other side of the people that were close and they didn't do this, and now they're kind of in the same spot.
So let's do this. We have some questions I want to get to, but I want to just a summary is like think about this concept of vision, target, plan, and action. Set 2019 goals for monthly recurring revenue and the activities that support it. Because in the MSP business, that's what drives all the other revenue. Set a seat price and MRR average targets. So if your seat price is 120 today and you want to get to 140 or 150 or 160 or higher, how are you going to add that value? We gave you some hints today on how to do that. Put accountability in place. Remember, focused on value first. The higher you command a seat, the more likely you are to sell more and reach your goals. So I want to answer some questions that are really good here, but I want to, again, thank our partners. One is StorageCraft. Look, this is a key component in terms of what they're doing around backup and disaster recovery. They got this awesome promotion. If you go to storagecraft.com/Winatraxis, WINATRAXXAX, they're giving away this cool radio control supercar. It's worth like $750 just to check out what they're doing with their new partner program. And I'll bring this back up again at the
that
end.
thing does like 100 miles an hour. It's great.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. And then our friends at Auvik around network management. I mean, some of the stuff they're doing, like they have some features around auto config backup and network mapping, a few things that pay for this tool. You got to do things more efficiently today, and Auvik's one of the ways. So go to auvik.com/TRU19 and you book a demo, and they'll give you a $5 Starbucks gift card. And then True Methods. Here's real quick about us. So we have training in our software MyIT process to help you build your technology success practice. Here's a screenshot from our software where you can build a strategic roadmap, a VCIO process for every customer. But we have something for you. It's the business plan blueprint. It kind of reviews everything we talked about today with the worksheet at the end. If you want to get this and some more information about True Methods, go to truemethods.com/plan19. And as we answer a couple questions, I'll leave this up. So the StorageCraft, the Auvik, and the True Methods, there you get. I would suggest you go to all three of those. So a couple questions we had is, one was from David. Hey, we are less or greater than 50% product, how do we calculate our service profit percentage for MSP? So what you have to do, David, is and this is for everybody, because most people are selling product today or doing some other things outside of their core offering. You need to put those into revenue categories. So you know how much recurring revenue, non-recurring revenue, product revenue. Let's start with the simple ones. Then you need to be able to have the direct expenses. So for product, it should just be your product. Mainly, it's your product cost of goods sold. For managed service, it's your tools and your labor associated with that. And for your non-recurring services, it's your professional services labor. So you want to line up, okay? You want to be able to line up your revenue with the expenses so that you can see your gross margin for each of those categories. Am I answering that question, Bob?
Yeah. I think that's right.
All right. Martin asked a question. Did I get this right? Hang on, let me go back. Someone said, let's go back to StorageCraft. You get that right? Winatraxis.
Yeah.
That's right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So Martin asked a question. Hey, what's included in that 160? Oh man, we get that question. That's the $1 million question, isn't it? So let me give you the short story on this. I'll tell you generally what's included in it and then how you can figure it out specifically, okay? So generally it is support, your tool set, right? Centralized services, and your labor around to deliver that. It's for the customers that we work with, it's their technology alignment and their VCIO. So it's all the labor that's associated with that monthly recurring revenue. So what it would be specifically for you would be, we call this micro economics. You would look at the roles, right, that you have in your business for service delivery and the metrics around them and your tool set, and you would convert everything to an average cost per seat. So you would have to make decisions of what you include. Let's take a simple example. If you had a total cost for tools and labor on average of $45 a seat and wanted 70% gross margins, you would have to have an average selling price, seat price of 150. So within that 45, you have to make decisions of what you're going to put in there, both labor and tools and time, to maximize that value as part of the process, right, that we teach in our training program, so that you can determine how do you pack as much value into your seat cost so you can command the highest price. Troy said, I've heard a lot about EOS terminology in your presentation. Have you adopted their methodologies in your Formula One program? So Troy, the answer is no, but you hear it because the terminologies are pretty similar between like Gazelles or Mastering the Rockefeller Habits and EOS. What we have done is taken the core of business planning, and they both are really good processes. And we take that core, but we just apply it to the MSP business.
Yeah, or Jim Collins, you know, there's a lot of terminology that's in business around that.
Yeah, yeah. A couple other questions before we close up here. We're top of the hour. He said, I can see getting higher cost per seat for smaller companies like 20 seats. How do you scale it when they have 150 seats? What does the cost per seat scale down to? So here's the funny thing, Rich. When people come in and they learn our microeconomics, what you realize is one of the fallacies is compared to someone who has 80 or 100 seats compared to 20 seats, your costs don't go down dramatically. You know, your average tickets per month for endpoint or cost per seat doesn't really go down. So your tools costs are usually on a per seat. There might be a few small things that go down, but they don't go down dramatically. So one of the big mistakes people get, we find them, they have 100,000 a month of recurring revenue and the margins aren't right. And we look at it, and of that 100,000, they have one customer that's 20 or 25,000, and instead of being at their average of 150, they're at $100 a seat because they used that logic and they didn't know their costing. And every time when we go look at that deal, we find out that the margins are half. I'd almost rather be losing money on a deal because then you can get rid of it. But what usually happens is it's just half the margin. So it holds your business back. You can't live without it, but it's hard to live with it. So yeah, but again, the answer to that is understanding more about what your cost per seat is. Once you do that, you'll be able to know whether your price needs to go up or down as you scale. And the final question is, how do I become a TrueMethods client and gain access to the ongoing coaching, implement the strategy? So, Roy, you know what? If you just go to TrueMethods.com and download that white paper, someone from our team will reach out to you, and they'll explain to you what we do, and you can determine whether working with us would make sense. So, all right, if you have any other questions, again, if you download our paper there, someone from our team, one of our experts will reach out to you. But I want to thank StorageCraft. If you haven't checked them out, please take a look at what they're doing. Auvik, both of those companies really focused on making sure that you're delivering the right services and generating the most amount of revenue, right, with the least amount of cost. And of course, we'd love for you to check out TrueMethods as well. So we want to wish everybody a happy holidays. Please, please, please do your business plan. Right, Bob?
And put the process in place.
More importantly, put the process in place. Yeah, don't just do it and put it in a shelf. Get working on it and make sure you're revisiting it every quarter, every month, every week to make sure you're on track and taking actions. And say no to everything that's not on your plan.
Yeah.
Okay?
All right.
All right. Bob, thanks so much for your help and make it a great day.